artists, and welcome back to another episode of Paint Along with Skye. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Skye and I post beginning level acrylic painting tutorials here on YouTube every Saturday. So make sure to hit subscribe so you can join the fun and paint along. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. This week it is almost summertime. Many of us may have a vacation on our minds. I wanted to do a sort of classic vacation summertime painting of a festival on a pier, reminiscent of like the Santa Monica Pier was my inspiration today, but it's not exact. Fantasy pier, and we're going to use our standard brushes for this class like we use in most of our classes. I like to use these 4 sizes of brushes. These 4 happen to come in a kit. Your brushes don't need to be the exact same as mine, but they should be generally the same size and shapes. So I like to use a 3/4 inch wash brush and then 3 pointed brushes of different sizes. So I have here a size 10, a size 3, and a size 3/0. Gonna get those in my water cup off the side of the screen. For today's painting, I am going to entrust the help of a ruler. My ruler is clear, yours doesn't have to be. This is going to help us create our pier so that it's actually straight, which is gonna be really helpful. So we'll use that later on. The colors that I have to start with, this is just for the background step. So it's pretty much going to be all the colors that you see in today's painting, with the exception of black, which will be our second step, which will be also fairly lengthy. And we'll have a lot to do with our silhouette in our second part. But for this first part, we're just gonna do our sunset and water. So I have a fair amount of white, some cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, and cadmium red, and then a little bit of violet and a little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to use cobalt blue. You could use ultramarine or different hue of blue if you wanted to, but we did ultramarine with last week's Desert Starry Night inspired painting, so I figured we'd mix it up and use some cobalt today. I'm going to grab my largest brush, and I always use a little bit of water on my brush to mix it into my paint. And we're going to start with our lightest color right along the horizon. And that's going to be a beautiful light yellow, which I'm going to just use yellow and white for. And I'm going to go a little bit further down than halfway, but it doesn't need to be perfect. And that first line is going to be the brightest part of my sunset, right where the sun is dipping below the horizon is where it's going to be brightest. So then I'm going to bring that yellow up a little bit and sort of more towards the center a little bit too. Okay, always like doing fun gradations like this from one color to the next, very satisfying. I'm going to grab now one color darker. So we're gonna do a yellow orange. We're gonna work our way up kind of through the color wheel, not all the way to green, but we'll go yellow, orange, red to purple, aka violet. If you'd like to learn more about the color wheel and how to blend colors, I do have a special course on that called Color Theory 101 that is available on Skillshare and also through my membership program. There's links below for more information about that. If you're interested, if you need a refresher, or if you've never had it, that can be something really helpful. So I've blended my orange into my yellow here. I'm also going to do the same thing beneath my horizon line. And I'm going to start with this orange. We have a smaller space, but we want to fit all those colors in. And I'm going to add my light yellow at the same time. And since these colors are so close to each other on the color wheel, we don't really need to wash our brush in between. We're going to work with the wet on wet blending that the paint is going to naturally give us. So I have sort of a bright yellow and then yellow orange to yellow orange. Again, this is right where our little sun is going to be dipping over the horizon in our imaginations. All right, and then one more dash of orange to help us inch a little bit more towards red. Don't be shy, get in there and blend. Long fluid brush strokes that go all the way off the side of the canvas will help it so that it doesn't look so streaky. And you want to work pretty quick with wet on wet blending, otherwise things will dry. All right, so a little bit of bright orange right next to our yellow orange. So we're starting to get really nice gradation. We still have some white left though. Haven't filled it in all the way because we got a few more colors to go in this small space. All right, moving along now to red. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my red to get sort of like a vibrant pink. Not too pastel, still fairly vibrant. And I'm going to take just a few swipes of this gorgeous red in here, still leaving space for my purple stripe and a little peekaboo of blue as well. And then I think I'm going to rinse my brush and take some orange to help me blend right into my red, since I came in with kind of a lot of color there. So it's going to be sort of a back and forth, sort of a play of adding one color to the other to get that gradation. So maybe you need a little bit more red, a little bit more orange, yellow, whatever is unique to your painting. Okay, just a little bit of blending. I think I might add a little bit more red here. But let's work with some purple, kind of at the same time. Loving the sunset colors. I'm going to add a little bit of white to my purple too. Purple's a pretty dark color on its own, absolutely gorgeous. But we want to have a pretty bright background so that we get a nice contrast with our gorgeous black later. A little bit of purple right on top of the red, and then we should be pretty much all the way at the top. And I think I'll probably add some more red. Like I said, blending is a play back and forth. And it's especially dry this time of year where I live too. So things are drying real quick. So we gotta move quick. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of muddiness there, which I don't want, so I'm not gonna overblend. A little bit of blue. Just in that little top stripe. Blends nicely into my purple. And that's looking pretty good, except for my red got a little bit muddy with my purple, but we're gonna address that in just a moment. Gonna take that blue down to my bottom stripe. Plenty of paint, nice and vibrant. That's gonna blend right into that purple. There we go. And then some more red, just to brighten things up a little bit. And we might even want to use a bit more white. And go one more shade towards pink. Since we are going pretty far through the color wheel, if your orange blends with your blue, you'll start to get muddy colors. So that's why we want to kind of walk our way there and back. and not overwork things too much. We're gonna work our sunset just a little bit until it's looking pretty good. Then we will let this layer dry in just a minute. That does look better. Pinch more white in my red. Just helping myself blend. I'm also sort of allowing a little bit of streakiness, just to sort of add interest. All right, and then this is sort of an optional step, but if you'd like, you can grab a medium-sized brush. And I'm also going to take some white right through sort of this yellow brightest part in the center. And I'm going back and forth with my brush strokes. And again, that's right where my sun would be dipping over the horizon. And then reflecting a little bit into the ocean. Definitely moving quick with these brush strokes, but very light-handed. All right, and that looks pretty good for a first layer. We can tidy things up a little bit with our second pass of some of these colors in just a minute, but let's let this layer dry for just a bit and we'll come back and finish everything off. All right, I'll see everyone in a few. Okay, artists, we have a dry first layer, and I kept the same colors on my palette paper, but I did sneak a little bit more white on there. So I want to do just a little bit of additional color layering on my sunset because it did get a little bit muddy in my blending process. I just want to brighten things up a little bit. This really ultimately is an optional step. I love bright colors, so I tried to avoid these sort of muddy neutral tones. That's just me. So I'm gonna go right back into just some of the areas that I feel like need it. So I'm taking some more of my light pink in to my red area. We'll probably need a little bit more orange as well. I'm just keeping my brush strokes horizontal. Down here is gonna be my water area. And then in my sky too, for today at least, the clouds are mostly just back and forth as well. Horizontal brush strokes is the name of the game today, for our background at least. All right, and I think I'll sneak a little bit of some gorgeous fresh purple now that I have a dry first layer as well. As you can see, that really helps with coverage too, so that we have nice and vibrant opaque colors. And I'm allowing there to be a little bit of streakiness. Not going for a perfectly smooth blend. See down here, I don't even have very much purple left. So I definitely want to add at least a few brush strokes. Much better. Wonderful. All right, and I think just a little bit of fresh orange as well. Orange and white, like a gorgeous orange sherbet color. Right, help that blend right beautifully into my red. All right. I think a little bit of blue too. Might as well just come back in with all of my same colors for one more pass. One more chance to get our background layer just how we like before we move on to our pier. All right. Looking pretty good. Let's add a little bit of a yellow or yellow white right in our yellow section to bring that down into the orange a little bit, just to deliberately make things a little bit stripier. It really plays into that like water reflection feel down here, especially in the ocean area, but we'll do some up above as well. All right. Okay, that looks much better. Once we are finished with our background, I'm gonna let this dry fully, and I'm also going to rinse my brushes and switch out my palette and get ready for the second part. So let's step away again and take another short break, and I'll see you guys when everything is dry and tidy. Okay, welcome back, artists. We have a completely dry, beautiful sunset background and just some black and white here on a new piece of palette paper. Here I have also my trusty ruler, and I realized too that I was going to need some sort of circular thing for my Ferris wheel. And go ahead and search through your house and find whatever works. I found this tape roll, which is going to be a dynamite size for my gorgeous Ferris wheel later. A coaster I think I used in my first one, which could also work, or like a small saucer or upside down cup, something to that effect. Or you could even be fancy and use one of those geometry devices. I'm not sure the word for it. I want to say compass, mathematical compass. Let's start first with our pier. I'm going to use our ruler for that. And this ruler is perfect with the size canvas because there's still a little bit of extra room at the end. And I can square it up here with the side of my canvas and get a nice straight line. And our pier is going to come up a little bit higher than our initial horizon line because its supports are going to be kind of closer more towards the actual horizon line. So we're going to scoot it up a little bit further than where we first started today. And I'm going to use black right away, but that is a bold move. If you would prefer, you could just use a wet brush. And then once you have your straight line, you can come back with black, but it is going to need to be black at some point since we're doing silhouettes for the rest of the class. So I'm going to just very carefully go along the top of my ruler, almost all the way over. Moved my hand a little bit, but that's okay because we can create some buildings there. That'll be a Bob Ross style happy accident. But I should have a fairly straight line to get me started. All right. And I think I'll go over that right away and thicken it up just slightly. And try to make it as straight as possible. Straight, clean line, but again, these areas where your hand may slip and create a thicker line than you want, we will just create buildings. I'm going to go all the way towards the end and square it off at the end of the pier. All right, and I'm just going to leave those slightly thicker areas for now, how they are. It's fine. and we will create more different structures on our pier after we do all the supports. So I want to do all of those vertical lines now. I'm going to use this same brush, but you could use your smaller brush if you would prefer. I'm thinking about updating our brushes. Since I love this kit, I always use the largest 3 sizes are perfect, but the teeny tiny brush is a little too short for my preference, and it often brings drips, which makes me a little crazy. So I may use a different big small brush, which would require updating what kit I use, or if we're going to go back to not using a kit. So that's still in the works, but for now I'm going to use this second to smallest brush, and I'm going to do one vertical line to get me started, and I'm going to try to match the height as close as I can. As you can see, it's already not perfect, and that's okay. So we're gonna have a little shadowy area at the bottom in a minute. That's going to help us have everything look like it ends at the same level. But we want to have them be the same width. Generally, it's not perfect. You know, you could, if you wanted to be a stickler, you could get out your ruler and actually space these out. But I am rather math adverse. I'm not a color inside the lines kind of gal all the time. So I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna go all the way from one side to the other and sort of check back on things, even them out as needed. And we're just going to patiently add all of our vertical lines. Feel free to move your canvas. We really, really want to make sure that all of these lines in particular are straight up and down. And as my hand sort of travels over, I start to kind of go diagonal, and you want to resist this. Now this can be harder when you're keeping your painting perfectly centered. I'm doing that for the camera, but feel free to move yours around, get up close and personal as well. I like to get really close to my paintings for small details. Although today I'm wearing my glasses, so it's a little easier to stay further away. I just want to mention too, remember to use the digital format to your advantage. All right, being a fast painter does not necessarily mean that you're a better painter. I paint at a comfortable pace for me, but we all paint at different paces, and that's 100% okay. So remember that you can pause the video, fast forward, skip ahead, and you guys have the advantage of seeing what this painting looks like finished already too, which I don't even know. Although I do typically, almost always have a practice painting that I'm going off of first, so that's another reason. It's always quicker for me to paint it a second time. All right. And that way I feel like I know a little bit more what I'm doing when I lead you guys through. Okay, so that looks fairly even. I'm straight up and down the whole way. And then we're gonna take a little tiny bit of black, just working with black. And with the ever so lightest of pressure, gonna go kind of make an upside down T across all the bottoms, which is going to be the shadow of the pier. Little disjointed lines as they would cast on the moving water. And it's a great opportunity to make every final brush stroke from your up and down supports nice and tidy. We're gonna pull that just a little bit further down from the bottom. And then I also had some that look like they're coming from behind as well. Since the pier is, of course, in the middle of the water would be on both sides and reflecting on both sides. Super light pressure today for a lot of these steps. All right, not too much, just a little bit. That's looking good. Let's do our other most important element, which is going to be, of course, our kind of focal point Ferris wheel. Okay, so I'm going to grab my tape or circular object, and I'm going to be going on the outside, and I want to have it floating a little bit above the pier, since we're going to have quite a bit of like supports underneath to support a structure of this size. And I'm going to make sure that my black is nice and fluid, and I'm very carefully going to outline my circular shape. Again, if you would like, you're feeling a little hesitant, feel free to just use your brush, just a wet brush, and the water line will help be your initial guide rather than just going right to black. I'm going to take one fluid pass all the way around, and there I will have my main circular shape for my Ferris wheel. And I like to do one fluid pass first around the circular shape and then come back and thicken things up in a similar way that I created my pier. When you're working with silhouettes like this, you gotta be very careful and build it little bit by little bit. I always start a little thinner than I think I'm going to have my line. That gives me some wiggle room. Just very carefully going to fill in our circle. Nice and solid. This is another great time to move your canvas around and get up close and personal with it. It's a real challenge to do a good circle without moving the canvas. All right. And it's okay if things look a little bit wonky. It's a hand-painted kind of thing. Okay, it adds to it. If anyone asks, say you did it on purpose to add to the touch of whimsy. But not too thick. So we still need to do some details with our little, I'm not sure what those are called, seat cages, torture chambers. I find Ferris wheels quite scary. Okay, silence for my concentration. Okay, nice solid circle. Okay, phew, give yourself a pat on the back if you've made it this far, because those were two very important shapes. So now we have our circle and our pier. I'm just going to sort of finesse things from here and create a few more nice elements. Our big circle is done, and there is going to be an inner circle as well for our Ferris wheel. And I was thinking about using the inside of my tape for this, but it's not quite the right size. So I've taken another unique object. I have a candle here that is the right size. I don't want it to be too small or too big because we're gonna have a bunch of little cross lines here. So we don't want it to be super small. I also have like my paint. I was thinking maybe the paint lid would be a good size, but that's a little too small. So we Goldilocks some shapes here. A little bit too small, a little too big. The candle was just the right size. So we're gonna do a circle with this candle. This is on my initial practice painting. This is the only thing that I really feel like I messed up, which is this inner circle, and I got it ever so slightly off, and it kind of messed up the whole thing because these are very mathematical, of course, these Ferris wheels. So let's just make sure that it's nice and centered. All right, it's a little bit of a strange angle for you guys, but once I remove my circle shape, will make a little more sense. Excuse my creaky floor, and don't mind my painted candle. I will clean it after this. A little kitchen dish was almost the right size too. All right, so that is significantly more centered than I think it would be if I were to try to wing it. And I'm going to try to thicken my second circle as well. All the way around. Important structural support. Okay, doesn't need to be exactly perfect and neat and tidy, but as neat and tidy as we can make it. All right, and I would usually use my ruler. I think I can probably wing my straight lines though. I'm going to start by doing a little centered dot, and that should help guide me a little bit better. Little bullseye there. And I'm going to do a straight up and down line. You could give this a second to dry and use your ruler if you would like. Or it's also just great practice too to try to paint straight lines and circles. And that's really what we're here for too. It's fun and practice. So don't be afraid to try it. You can always paint over your painting if you don't like it. And try again, or on to the next one. Confession, I paint over most of my paintings. Very few survive. I personally believe that as an artist, we need to paint a lot, and then you end up with a few greatest hits, sort of like a musician. You know, like it's rare to like an entire anthology of a musician, and it's hard to make an entire album full of greatest hits. And the audience decides too what your greatest hits are. So we get a little too close to the work as artists, which is one of the wonderful advantages for me and this channel, is sometimes we're a little too hard on our own art, but other people love it. All right, so I have sort of like a bullseye plus sign with the cardinal directions, and then we're going to have in-between lines as well. And these in-between lines on the bottom are actually going to support the whole structure as like a base. So they're gonna go all the way to touch the pier. They're gonna look pretty long right now, but we're gonna add a base to this and it will attach everything a little bit more logically. We wanna have that attached down and then cut our little pie slice out for the top, since of course it's a wheel, it's moving around with equal pie slices on the top and bottom. Okay. Great, all right. Same brush, probably just gonna stick with this brush. And let's create a base, which is just going to be like a rectangle. And we'll go right along the bottom for some extra structural support on our pier fair or carnival or theme park, whatever you'd like to call it. These are permanent installations and the piers in California at least that I've been to. So I don't know if that constitutes a carnival or if that's more of a sort of a pop-up thing. All right, looking good. I'm going to thicken some other parts of my pier with some more just kind of like stuff going on. So one area a little bit thicker, I'm going to do a little rectangle next to the base of my Ferris wheel. Maybe this is like a little carnival building or a shack, a snack shack. And I'm gonna put a triangle on top just for a super easy little basic building shape. Okay, and then maybe another one right next to it. Maybe that's the restrooms. You get to be your little architect today and decide however you think it should be. I like it when they have little buildings at the end of the pier too. So I'm gonna do one of those. And maybe have like a little flatter rectangular shape here where I went a little too heavy-handed with my black line as a way to sort of tidy things up a bit. And maybe we'll kind of add some interest with a couple sort of unique shapes like lampposts and stuff like that. And then just with a tiny, tiny little end of my brush, I'm gonna do really small little squiggles in different parts of the pier. That would be people. All right, very cute. Okay, now under all of those shapes that I've just created, we're gonna do a little bit of extra shadowing. A little bit further down. to make it look like it's casting a shadow there in the water. And we sort of trail off our brush strokes to get smaller and smaller, sort of like a upside down triangle shape. All right. Do a little bit more shadowing over here. And I'm going to do a reflection of our Ferris wheel as well, but let's work a little bit more on finishing that shape off first, and that will be our sort of piece de la resistance. All right, let's add our little carriages. That's what I'm gonna call them. You have to be so many things when you're an artist. This week it's a carnival worker. Last week it was a geologist with our rock features. Really gotta look these kind of things up. So I'm gonna come up to the top. I'm going to just add a little rectangular shape on the right side of that top line. So that little cart would have gotten kind of right over the hump at the top for the full circle. And then I'm going to come, since I connected right here on this straight line, and then it might overlap a little bit so that you can see the rectangular shape just a little bit, because remember it's attached too, so it wouldn't be like hanging way out over here too much. And we gotta stay straight up and down with our orientation. All right, and then when you're all the way around, you're gonna just see the top part there of your rectangular shape, because it's gonna kind of dip into that little foundational area a little bit before it comes back up. And it continues around that circle shape. All right, looking cute. Really is what makes that look like a Ferris wheel. I really like the next step too, which is adding the lights. All right, looking pretty solid. Let me just finish things ever so slightly to make sure my rectangles are similar sizes. All right, that looks pretty good. Cute. All right, I think I'm going to add one more building, sort of like the suggestion of one coming from off the side there, just to make it look like we have more going on off the side of the canvas to kind of add to the interest of our painting. All right, and I'm going to do kind of a unique thing with my white to create some lights on my carnival. I'm going to use the back of my brush. This is going to create a nice circular dot, and I'm going to first create a little dot at the end of each of my straight lines. Right on top of your little carriage thing. I like the way that this kind of adds a tactile element as well. Going all the way around. right, and I think I have room for even one more in between. I'll give a nice little added touch of whimsy, like we like to do. All right. Super cute. Who doesn't love a little bit of twinkle lights? Okay. And might as well add a little bit of white into a few of our buildings, just as like the suggestion of some light coming from those sources as well, or even some reflection. Just have the front of my brush that time. Just made the tiniest little brush strokes. Alrighty, and then our piece de la resistance, of course, will be our reflection. And I am going to use my just wet brush technique here, and I'm going to do a circle down here to sort of lead me. And then I'm going to grab some of my black, and I'm very delicately going to add some back and forth brush strokes, staying horizontal, working my way all the way around the circle, disjointed in some areas, very light-handed. Just a tiny little bit of pressure. Right, and also need to do a few coming this way, and exactly like our shape above, we're doing it down below, but we're keeping things in our horizontal brush strokes, and we're trying not to create too much of a pattern. I know that's easier said than done, or more easily watched than done. All right, and in a few areas, I'm gonna add a little bit of sort of like squiggly movement. Okay. A little bit more water should help things go a little smoother. I should still be able to see a little bit of our background colors, of course. All right. And a little bit of white. Oops, got a drip even with this brush. Sometimes when you get a drip and you have a clean brush, you can just pull it right up like that. Gonna have a little bit of a straight line. I guess it's not straight, just not disjointed. I think that actually would look nicer. We just have a tiny little whisper of our shape up above. All right, it's looking pretty good. Just working this area a little bit more. Should look pretty reflective. And then yes, a little bit of white too, since we have a pretty twinkling lights in our tops shape, we're gonna have them a little tiny bit, seriously, like just like a whiff of white. Tiny little bit. Really light-handed here today, folks. All right, and maybe a little bit more reflective white down here. Sort of balance everything. So that we have a little bit of that white all over as a final nice little touch. All right. Pretty cute. I'm deciding to go off the book a little bit and add a little bit more blue here in the bottom just to go around those reflective marks that I just made. Just a little bit more of my background blue cobalt color just here in the bottom. Wanted to have just a tiny bit of stripiness of that blue color, maybe a little bit even of like light blue. Too light. There we go. Since it is water, might as well have a little bit more of a fresh blue color here at the bottom, just to give it that oceany feel. All right, you can put any other final touches that you'd like on your painting, but that is all the instruction that I have for us today. If you painted along, I would love to see your work, and I've created a Facebook group called the Art Club that is specifically designed for that purpose. We would love to have you join us over there and share your masterpieces, whether it be from painting along with me or from your own studios and imaginations. We would love to have you over there. There's a link in the description box below to go over and join us on Facebook. And I hope you enjoyed today's class. Happy summer, and until next time, stay creative.